Welcome back to the Tom Lin Truyen channel. Today I would like to continue sharing Chapter 11.
The story. Hell Hostel. Please listen.
However, just thinking about being found by a ghost, not knowing what the consequences would be, he did not dare to stop, continuing to speed up his legs. The blood rule instructed that as long as he did not leave Mount Huayan, hiding anywhere was fine.
Like that.
Aim at the foot of the mountain and run down? Like that, when the time was up, he could immediately leave. However, he immediately rejected this idea. If he was found by two then in a situation where there was no way to leave Mount Huayan, there was clearly no way to escape. He still had to find a suitable place to hide near the foot of the mountain. 12 hours sounded very short, only half a day. But for these landlords, every minute, every second was agony and terror. Zhang Lingfeng looked at his watch almost every 2 to 3 minutes, then turned his head to see if Si Shun was chasing after him. I wonder how fast that kid is running. Could he turn his head back to peek at the route we ran away from? Zhang Lingfeng had an arrogant personality, and his relationship with the other owners was not very close, and Si Shun was on a relatively high floor, so he had even less contact with him. In the inn, the only person who had a relatively good relationship with him was the deceased Qin Xiaotian. When Zhang Lingfeng learned of his death, he really cried. However, there was no way to stay in this inn. Everyone was living for today without knowing tomorrow. No matter how many times they went to carry out the blood command, they might never return. Living in this inn was indeed quite scary, but over time, that fear gradually became numb. The owners of the houses now could only fight to the death until the 10th blood command was finished before they could be freed and leave this damned inn. I absolutely will not die. I must leave this inn alive. The moment Zhang Lingfeng muttered to himself, a gust of wind suddenly blew. This wind blew a bit strangely, stirring up the dust on the ground, even blurring his eyes. Zhang Lingfeng momentarily lost his footing, his vision went dark, and he fell to the ground, and his ankle was dislocated. Zhang Lingfeng was extremely frightened. His ankle was dislocated while playing hide and seek. This was no joke. He hurriedly used his hands to rub his ankle as hard as he could, but no matter how he rubbed it, it still hurt. If it was like this, let alone running, even walking would be extremely slow. Sweat immediately appeared on his forehead. He hurriedly looked around, silently praying to all the gods and Buddhas he knew, hoping that Si Shun would never find him right now. It wouldn't be such a coincidence. This mountain was so big, there was no way he would find him so quickly. He stood up, gritted his teeth, and wanted to continue walking forward. After all, he was too close to the top of the mountain. Every step he took would send intense pain from his feet. But Zhang Lingfeng still tried his best and didn't give up. Shun Jinqing originally wanted to drive up the mountain, but the mountain road was too bumpy compared to his imagination. Especially there was a stretch of road covered with rubble. If he forced himself to drive through there, the tire would definitely get punctured, so he could only park the car at the foot of the mountain. If he wanted to run, he could only use his feet. Although Li Yin said that it would be better to separate and run away, in his heart he hoped that he could run away with someone else. On normal days, he was very cheerful and had very good relationships in the inn. The closest one was Xia Yuan. When Ying Zai learned from his mouth that he had died, he was also distressed for a few days. He found it hard to accept that a person wearing glasses, always full of confidence like Xia Yuan, would simply die like that. But this was the truth. No landlord could guarantee that he would survive. Li Yin became the new building manager, although he could accept it in his heart, but in his subconscious, there was always a contradiction. He felt that only Xia Yuan had the talent to take on this position of building manager. Li Yin had only lived in the inn for a year. Of course, Li Yin's intelligence could not be doubted, but he still felt that compared to Xia Yuan, he was one level behind. Xia Yuan was always full of confidence. Even if Mount Tai collapsed, he would not change his expression, encouraging many householders to actively face the blood command. But Li Yin did not give people that feeling. Moreover, even Xia Yuan had died, So what about the other householders? This matter inevitably made people feel quite hopeless. However, if they wanted to survive, the only way was to continue to carry out the blood command. Shun Jinxing hoped that Li Yin could bring new hope to the householders. After all, Xia Yuan could no longer bring the dead back to life. I wonder if Yuan and Bing Yong are doing well now. After he became the landlord of the boarding house, Shun Jinxing bitterly decided to divorce his wife. After all, his wife was still young, and after he entered the boarding house, no one knew what his future would be like. Nowadays, women who had been married once and widows were two completely different concepts. The first type of person wanting to remarry was naturally much easier than the latter. Moreover, this kind of thing could not be told to his wife honestly, otherwise he would be considered paranoid. In the end, he gritted his teeth, found a girl from the province who came to work in the city, secretly gave her some money, and acted out a play in front of his wife, saying that he was having an affair outside, so he wanted to divorce his wife. After all, if he divorced without reason, his wife would constantly investigate the reason, perhaps thinking that he was suffering and refused to divorce. As a result, Shun Jinxing carried all the bad reputation on his back. Even his own children looked down on him, scolding him as Chen Shimi, an ungrateful man. His wife was extremely angry at that time, and because Shun Jinxing had to stay in a motel, he threw the divorce papers to his wife and left the house, authorizing a lawyer to deal with his wife. This made his wife even more convinced that he had changed his mind, and bitterly decided to sign the divorce papers. Although this happened half a year ago, when Shun Jinxing recalled it, he was still as miserable as before. His wife was very strong. The house they lived in before was mainly paid for by Shun Jinxing, and the head of the household was also Shun Jinxing, so his wife resolutely left home, single-handedly taking the child, Bin Duong, out into society to find a job to support her son. For a while, those who did not know the truth of the matter all criticized Shun Jinxing. Even his biological parents said that if he did not remarry his wife, they would cut off all ties with him. As for his close friends, they told him that it was okay for a man to have fun outside when he had a chance, and that it was normal for him to have a crush on someone sometimes. But why should he let his wife retire early? Some people also said that he did not even care about the matter of child custody. Shun Jinxing naturally could not fight for child custody. He really could not live with his own child. Moreover, as the one who committed the crime, even if he fought for child custody, the court would not be able to rule in his favor. In the half year after the divorce, Shun Jinxing always sent child support on time, but his wife never took the initiative to contact him. Furthermore, the wife's new residence is also very far away, although it has not been 48 hours since they went back and forth, but no one can guarantee that there will be a traffic jam or a similar emergency. Normally no one will leave the inn. In the end, Shun Jinxing mustered up the courage to visit his wife once, but his wife did not want to see him. After the owners of the inn knew about him, everyone was very touched. Especially Xia Yuan, after knowing this, said, "Don't be discouraged. Wait until we leave the inn. I will definitely help you pursue your wife again." Even though at that time, the matter of the inn cannot be told to her, but at least you can live by her side. Xia Yuan spoke very sincerely, making Shun Jinxing extremely touched, so he and Xia Yuan also became good friends. The two of them agreed that they must survive leaving the inn together. Unexpectedly, Xia Yuan was ahead of him. The old agreement still rang in his ears, but Xia Yuan had already died. "I will try my best to survive as I promised you."
Xia Yuan.
Among these four people, the slowest to escape was Tang Lanxian. Tang Lanxian was one of the householders who had the best relationship with Li Yin, and his relationship with Shun Jinxing was also not bad. Tang Lanxian had a gentle and kind personality, a typical intellectual. In the inn, everyone who saw him would greet him as Dr. Tang. Lan Xuan's parents were not in the country. He worked at a large hospital in the city. As a surgeon, he often assisted in treating people when carrying out the blood order, even providing the householders with various medicines and imparting emergency medical knowledge, which moved the householders very much. The landlords joked with each other that if there was a landlord in this building who, when he died, caused more than half of the remaining households to shed tears of sorrow, then it would definitely be Dr. Tang Lanxian. Tang Lanxian greatly admired Li Yin's father, Li Yong. Li Yong was currently the director of a famous general hospital in K-City, and the hospital's president was also Li Yin's mother. Tang Lanxian had attended a medical conference hosted by Dean Li, and greatly admired Dean Li's in-depth knowledge. Also because of this reason, he and Li Yin had a particularly good relationship. He was very surprised to see that Li Yin did not inherit his father's hospital, but instead became an online writer, and could not help but feel extremely strange. He and Li Yin had exchanged medical knowledge before, and discovered that in this aspect, Li Yin was not inferior to his father. Regarding this, Li Yin explained that he did not like this kind of inheritance status. After all, he was proficient in more than one field of medicine, and could completely work in other fields. Lan Huan felt that this was not the key reason. He thought that Li Yin did not want to be a doctor, because of his sensitivity to death. Becoming a doctor means facing people's illness and death every minute and every second. In fact, it is an extremely harsh psychological test. Li Yin once said a sentence. It feels like being a doctor for a long time has gradually made people's death insensitive. Even if they die tragically, there is no way to make them sad. I don't like that kind of appearance, happy for living, sad for dying. This is what a human being is. Lan Huan always remembered those words in his heart. He agreed with Li Yin's words. For a doctor, although medical skills are very important, a heart that knows how to sympathize and pity is absolutely indispensable. Only with a heart that always cherishes and respects life can one devote all their strength to saving each life. At the moment Lan Huan thought like that, he was already far away from the mountain top. Suddenly, the phone in his pocket vibrated again. He took it out to see. It was Li Yin calling. Lan Huan picked up the phone and asked, "Li Yin, what's the matter?"
Lan Huan.
"How did you guys choose a ghost? I just had a new idea about the blood character directive. I want to discuss it with you." "Oh, I finished choosing. What do you think?"
How to choose? Who will be the ghost?
"We'll use rock, paper, scissors to choose. The ghost will be Xishen." Li Yin seemed to not hear clearly, and asked another question.
Who? Who will be the ghost?
Xishen, it's the Xishen in apartment 1215, the one who likes to play tarot cards. Li Yin shouted on the other end of the line.
Lan Huan, calm down a bit for me.
The last apartment of our 12th floor is 1214. Where did apartment 1215 come from?
Xishen?
There's no owner of this name in the apartment building. Li Yin, what joke are you making? Didn't Xishen also gather downstairs with us, and said that there was also a blood character in his apartment?
Calm down.
This time, the only ones who received the blood instructions were you, Shun Jinqing, Yang Lin, and Zhang Lingfeng. Where did that Xishen come from? Lan Huan suddenly jumped. His brain suddenly became clear.
That's right.
Since when did our inn have a landlord named Xishen? I searched my memory once, but I couldn't find this person. What about living in apartment 1215, being a person who likes to use tarot cards to tell fortunes? That was all that was related to Xishen. It was all fake memories. I'm afraid that after leaving the inn, I met him, then was bewitched by him, considered him as a landlord, then went to Huayan Mountain with him, played rock, paper, scissors with him to confirm that he was a ghost. At this moment, Lan Huan realized something. In other words, the four of them were now playing hide and seek with a real ghost.
A real ghost.
Playing hide and seek with them, must find all of them. Tang Lan Huan immediately shivered, unconsciously turned around to look around. Her legs immediately increased speed. While running, she asked Liin, "Liin, what do you think we should do now?" At this moment, Liin already understood what method the ghost used to appear before them. Moreover, it was estimated that no matter what method was used to select the ghost, it would be the non-existent Si Shan who would be in charge. Liin kept thinking about how to deal with the current situation, finally gritted his teeth and said, "Try your best to move around randomly without following any rules, but you must always make sure that you are further and further away from the mountain top. The escape route must be extremely chaotic. Also, don't go near the cliff. Absolutely don't hide in a fixed place. It will be very easy to be found."
I know.
If you're hungry, eat while you move, don't stop. If you're too tired, just take a quick rest, and always be alert of your surroundings. Remember, try not to go into narrow trails. The more open the place, the safer it is. I'll call the other 3 people. You must take care of yourself. Liin hung up the phone, then immediately dialed Shun Jinxing's number. Shun Jinxing was already far away from the top of the mountain, and was running around the 3 kingdoms at the foot of the mountain. When he felt his phone vibrate, he quickly took it out to see. It turned out to be Liin calling. "Hey Li, head of the building, what's the matter?" In Shun Jinxing's mind, the head of the building was still Xia Yuan, and he was not used to calling Liin by the name of head of the building. Liin immediately told him everything. At first Shun Jinxing still didn't understand what was going on, but after a while, it was like a bucket of cold water was poured on his head and he suddenly woke up. In his memory, the person called Si Shin didn't exist at all. How could there be such a thing? After all, Shun Jinxing had only lived in the inn for half a year, and had only carried out the blood command once. These strange phenomena, he immediately felt very puzzled. Liin repeated the words he had advised Tang Lonxian earlier to him once, then said, "In short, you don't need to be nervous. Actually, this is good. The meaning of the blood command is finally clear. This situation, compared to everything being vague, is much better." After that, Liin called Yonglin again. At this time, Zhang Lingfeng had already run to the side of the Huayan Mountain Gorge. He really couldn't find any place to hide, not even a tree trunk. He took out a bottle of mineral water, unscrewed the cap, took a big gulp of water, then wiped his mouth. The pain in his leg was much better than before. But even so, it was still not convenient to walk. And if he wanted to run, it would be even more uncomfortable.
He wouldn't chase after him, right?
Zhang Lingfeng carefully recalled the things related to Xishun, only to suddenly discover that his memories of this Xishun were relatively vague. What was even more bizarre was that it had only been less than an hour since they parted ways, yet he had no way of remembering Xishun's appearance. What's wrong with me? Is there a problem with my memory? Zhang Lingfeng put the bottle of mineral water away and continued to move forward. After only a few meters, the phone in his pocket vibrated again.
Huh?
Who is it? He took out his phone to look. It was Liin's phone. Just flipped the cover, suddenly felt like his left foot stepped on empty space, hurriedly grabbed a protruding rock next to him, and the phone immediately fell down the cliff. Zhang Lingfeng was secretly frightened while holding on to that large rock. Suddenly he felt his hair stand on end.
This place.
Why did a cliff appear here? Just now it was clearly a flat, open piece of land. Moreover, looking at the height of this cliff, it must be at least 50 to 60 meters, if he fell down. Zhang Lingfeng was immediately scared to the point that his face turned pale.
Run. Quickly run.
Shun Jinxing was probably on the west side of the mountain at this time. After receiving Liin's phone call, he immediately did not dare to rest and tried to run as fast as he could. As a result, his physical strength was almost exhausted. But just thinking about a ghost that was chasing them, Shun Jinxing still did not dare to stop to rest. After all, the other party was not human. No matter how fast he ran, how well he hid, there was a possibility of being found. This was truly too terrifying. The closer he got to the foot of the mountain, the more difficult it was to walk. Not only was the ground uneven, but there were also more and more stone slabs. This had a huge impact on his speed. At this moment, his phone vibrated again. Shun Jinxing immediately took out his cell phone to see. The caller was his wife. He immediately slowed down and answered the call. In the past half year, he had called his wife many times, but she had never picked up. Why did she call him today? But as soon as the line was connected, his wife's sobbing voice immediately came through. Jinxing. Something bad happened. Something big happened. Bingyong was hit by a car. He is currently being treated in the hospital. Your blood is RH-. Your blood is not compatible. There is no blood in the blood bank. Only I can give you blood. RH is a way to classify blood types. Just like the ABO blood group system, the RH blood group system has two blood types, RH+ and RH-. In Vietnam, the RH+ blood group accounts for a very high percentage of about 99.96%, while the RH- blood group only accounts for about 0.04%, which is very low. Shun Jinxing's brain immediately went blank. The phone in his hand was shaking violently. His blood is RH-, because this blood type is relatively rare, so when he is injured and needs a blood transfusion, usually a relative is needed to come and act as the blood donor. His son unexpectedly inherited this blood type.
How? How did this happen?
Shun Jinxing's heart felt like it was cut by a knife, he said.
How did he get hit by a car?
Is it serious? At this moment, he had even forgotten his own situation.
It was noon.
During lunch break, he went outside to play at school, and when he was crossing the street, a driver ran a red light and hit him. When I got to the hospital, Bin Duong was covered in blood. The doctor said that if he didn't have a blood transfusion, it would be very dangerous. The hospital is Zhengtian Hospital. Zhengtian Hospital? Shun Jinxing's heart trembled. The hospital wasn't too far away. If he drove there, he could probably get there within an hour.
Son.
Bin Duong, how much longer can Bin Duong last? Shun Jinxing was about to go crazy at this moment. The doctor is currently doing his best to save her. She has lost a lot of blood, and if she doesn't have a blood transfusion in time, her life will be in danger. Please come here quickly. She is in the emergency room on the 5th floor. Shun Jinxing was naturally extremely anxious, but he couldn't leave Huayan Mountain right now. If he were to leave Huayan Mountain, the shadow would manipulate him into committing suicide. He had previously witnessed a landlord who didn't believe Xia Yuan's warning and left the inn. And 48 hours later, that person had clearly taken a knife and cut his own throat to death. Shun Jinxing remembered very clearly that before that person committed suicide, his shadow automatically acted first, and then that person followed suit. Therefore, Shun Jinxing, who had been somewhat skeptical of Xia Yuan's words, had completely believed in the terror of this inn. If you want to live and leave the inn, the only way is to pass the blood command 10 times. This is the only way. Really. Can't find anyone suitable for a blood transfusion. Shun Jinxing's voice was already trembling. At this moment he just wanted to rush to the hospital to save his son, but if he left Mount Huayan, he would be cursed to death by the inn. It's because there's nothing that I had to call you. His wife was already roaring angrily at this moment. You can leave me, but Bingyong is your son. Can't you save him?
You can't come.
Shun Jinxing felt that living was more painful than dying at this moment. How could it be such a coincidence? How could his son get into a traffic accident at this moment? Right now, there were still more than 11 hours left before he could return to the inn. If he didn't have time to have a blood transfusion, the consequences would be needless to say.
Li Yin. That's right, Li Yin.
Zhengtian Hospital, coincidentally, was the hospital where Li Yin's father worked. Li Yin's father, Li Yong, was the director of Zhengtian Hospital, and his mother was the chairwoman of the hospital's board of directors. Wait a minute, Yuan, I'm calling to ask someone for help." After that, he hung up and called Li Yin.
"What's the matter?"
"Shun Zhenxing." Li Yin saw him calling and thought that something bad had happened.
"Chief,
"Quickly save my child. My child had a traffic accident and is currently being treated at your father's hospital. He needs a blood transfusion right now." "Uncle, what did you say?" Li Yin was extremely surprised and asked, "Uncle, how did you know that your child had an accident?" "My wife called to tell me. My child has a negative blood type, and there is none in the blood bank. Only I can give him a blood transfusion." Li Yin felt unbelievable. How could such a coincidence happen? Please call your father. Tell him to think of a way. Isn't your father's Zhengtian hospital a big hospital like that?
I know.
I will do my best to help you. I will ask the other owners, is there anyone with RH blood type?
Thank you. Li Yin.
Shun Zhenxing at this moment was sobbing uncontrollably. After Li Yin hung up the phone, he immediately called his father. But his father's phone was clearly turned off.
Guess, he was in a meeting?
Li Yin immediately called his mother. She was a member of the hospital's board of directors, telling her could also solve the problem.
However,
the phone was clearly turned off. Surely this meeting also has mother attending? Li Yin is blood type A, basically cannot help than Chan Hung. Li Yin left his apartment, went to knock on the door of apartment 403 next door. Don Tuda opened the door after a while, asked,
"What's wrong? You look so nervous."
"Did something happen to the 4 people who went to Hoa Nam Mountain?"
Ziyi. Your blood type? Type B.
Is there anything?
No, nothing.
In a short period of time, where can I find someone with RH blood type? Seeing his unsteady expression, Don Tuda immediately asked, "Is the blood type related to this blood type?" Li Yin's heart was burning at this moment. What should he do? Zhang Lingfeng did not know what Li Yin called just now. What exactly did he want to tell him? Could it be that he discovered the mystery in the blood type instruction? However, there was no way to know now. The phone fell from such a high place, it must be broken. At this moment, he started to panic. Perhaps Li Yin wanted to tell him something very important. But now he didn't know anything. The consequences would be so angry. If he had known earlier, he would have bought 2 phones to bring with him. This desolate mountain that few people visited was still as desolate as before, without any sound around. But because of that, it was even more terrifying. Where exactly would the ghosts come from? If Xishan found him, would he really die? Could it be that if he wasn't found, something would happen instead? It was very possible that the inn had deceived them many times through the blood command. However, he couldn't just stand there and wait for Xishan to come find him. After all, there was a possibility that he would die after being found. Right at this moment, Zhang Lingfeng suddenly saw clearly that cliff in front, and right next to the cliff was that rock. Could it be that I've been circling around for a while now, and ended up circling back here? This mountain is barren everywhere. There's basically no reference. It's no wonder this happened. When I get close to that cliff, I can lean over a bit and see the scenery below. Who knows, I might see Seem. That ghost playing landlord C, what's his name? Zhang Lingfeng was getting more and more confused. He kept thinking, that person, what's his name? He's the landlord of apartment 121. How much? At this moment, Zhang Lingfeng shivered. Is there such a person among the landlords in the inn? He dropped his butt to the ground, cold sweat continuously pouring out. There's no such person. This person basically didn't exist in the inn.
So, who was he?
Zhang Lingfeng kept retreating his body backwards, leaning against a large rock, his heartbeat constantly accelerating.
He was a real ghost.
Suddenly from behind that rock, a pale arm reached out, grabbing Zhang Lingfeng's shoulder. The first person found. Zhang Lingfeng still hadn't had time to react. His entire body was pulled behind the large rock by that pale arm. Immediately, this place regained its silence. Young Lin was sitting on a rock at this time. He poured mineral water onto the ground in front of him. Like this, relying on the reflection of the mineral water, he could always see the scene behind him, without having to turn his head back all the time. Fortunately, summer had passed. The weather wasn't too hot, otherwise this puddle of water would quickly evaporate. There was no damp place on this mountain, nor was there any tree, but as the afternoon progressed, the ground temperature gradually decreased. The moment Li Yin made that phone call, young Lin was initially terrified, but he calmed down later. The situation had not changed at all. After all, they had known from the beginning that they could not possibly spend 12 hours peacefully on this mountain. It was just that the ghost actually had to come looking for them. It could be seen that this ghost did not have the ability to sense their location, otherwise it could appear before them at any time and place. Because in the past, ghosts that encountered the blood command had the ability to move to any place they wanted. This limitation was probably the only way out that the inn had given them. If they wanted to fully utilize this advantage, they would have to rely on themselves. If they were like a headless fly running around the mountain, he would consider it a mistake. This mountain is very large. If the devils have no way of knowing their location, it would be better to hide in some hidden place, otherwise it would be difficult to be found, and if they ran around randomly, the possibility of being found would increase even more. Chapter 11 ends. Please come back tomorrow to continue reading Chapter 12. Thank you and goodbye.